Welcome to today's edition of Hard Topics on the KF Leadership channel. We shall continue our discussion on the topics God's criteria for leadership. In the previous videos, we took a look at the various criteria or factors that God used in selecting or appointing the person who eventually becomes the king, the leader, and the head of a nation or of a group of people. And we looked at the fact that the number one criteria God uses is the agenda and the purpose of God for that people or those people at that particular period in time. We said that that is the number one factor God uses in selecting whoever becomes a leader, irrespective of their competence, their skills level, their nature, and all whatnot. As God will always look for the person he sees fit to bring about his agenda on the face of it and allow such a person to get into position of leadership. The second criteria we discussed was righteousness or right standing with God. That God often prefers the person who is in right standing with God because such a person is in a better position to hear God and to bring and demonstrate the character or the characteristics of God while in leadership. And today we'll be looking at the third criteria, which is that of capacity, skills, and competence. Capacity, skills, and competence. Because God is a God of order, God is a God of skill, and God is a God of competence. God also considers this when selecting who eventually becomes the head of a people. And according to the scriptures we have here, as it's written in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 29, it says, "Do you see a man skilled in his work? He will stand before kings, he will not stand before obscure men or mere men." A man skilled in his work, a man skilled in his craft. God likes people who are skilled because God Himself believes in the evolution of leadership as opposed to emergence of leadership. I have you can go online and look at my video where I explain the difference between evolution of leadership and emergence of leadership. God is in the process of bringing about leaders that evolve over the years. It takes them from one step to the other, from one level to the other, in order to develop their skills and their competence level and their capacity before He eventually brings them to the throne. He might have given them promises, He might have made assurances for them, but because as at the time when they grow, when they are younger, they may not have all the requisite skill, ability, and character to really fulfill the purpose of God. So God is usually in the process of building people over the years through the ranks before they get into position of leadership or the ultimate position to fulfill His purpose. We saw in the life of Joseph. From a boy, he was always at home, understanding domestic affairs at home. He did the same thing in the house of Potiphar. Then in the prison, eventually did the same thing administrative work even when he got into the service of Pharaoh. The same thing in the life of David. David started as a shepherd boy, then will serve King Saul, and later on served as brother to King Saul, then moved into went into hiding as a fugitive, and then he led a bunch of people, then became king of Judah, a portion of the entire kingdom of Israel, and eventually became the king all over all of Israel. Even Joshua had to serve under Moses, and for a while, Joshua understood or understudied Moses before eventually was handed over the authority to lead the children of God into the promised land. Even Moses himself, Moses was nurtured in the palace, and he grew up and learned all the form of sciences and the ways of the Egyptian. They were training him to become a king until God called him and said, "Look, there's another assignment," and he had to go into the wilderness for 40 years, where he was serving and working with under Jethro, who was his father-in-law, before God eventually brought him back into position of leadership. But God spent years training Moses in the heart and the skill of leadership, management, and all that. The same thing happened with Daniel. So the point is that God is interested in somebody who has capacity, who has the ability to lead. And so He will not just bring anybody into position of leadership overnight. It takes time to groom them. Even Jesus Christ. The Bible said that Jesus Christ learnt obedience gained wisdom by the things he suffered. He started as a child and he grew gradually to a position of leadership. There's a scripture here that I will have to read again. According to 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 28. It says, now Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor. So when Solomon noticed that the young man was industrious, he put him in charge of the whole labor force of the house of Joseph. Because they noticed he was industrious, he was skillful. They know he was competent. So God is not in the usual bit of just bringing anybody. It's only when the righteous person or the person with competence is not available and God needs somebody to fulfill his purpose, then that is why he brings about some other person. And if you bring some other person, it doesn't mean they're not competent. It's just me they be the one that God sees best to fulfill his purpose. That's why people will say, oh, why did these people get there? This person is not good enough. He's not competent enough. He's not smart enough. Because the righteous and the competent one sometimes fails to show up or to seize the opportunity. So the third important criteria God uses in bringing people into position of leadership is competence, skills, and capacity to deliver. We don't bring anybody into position of leadership. And that's what we find majorly as a bane in developing world, in most of part of sub-Saharan Africa, where people who lack the competence, who lack the capacity, who lack the skill, who have not even evolved over the years, but just emerge, seek and get into position of leadership because the systems, the institutions, and the method of selecting leadership has been taught or is warped. And so all manner of people, all kind of people just get into position of leadership. And because they don't have the capacity, they don't have the requisite skills, they don't have the preparation, they mess up the whole thing. Examples abound in sub-Saharan Africa and people of the global south. It's there everywhere for us to see. So it's important that even in the electoral cycle, in the process of selecting a leader, people who know better, who wants the best thing to happen, even the very elect, the people of God, should look for competent hands. Not just people because of popularity or because they have money, but are they competent and have they evolved over the years? Look at their track record and see, is this person capable of getting into position of leadership? Can this person really perform? And once you are satisfied with that, then you can take a decision to get him into position of leadership. And God backs up that. So it is important for us to know that God often looks at capacity, ability, skill, and competence to get people into position of leadership in combination with other factors. Thank you.